Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. Thank you for joining us today. Let us know in the chat where you're calling in from. We'd love to sort of get a sense of that. And great, welcome. Thanks for being with us. Feel free to add to the chat where you're calling in from, New York City. Welcome. Great, we're really thrilled to be with you today. Welcome to NMWA xChange, a spinoff of the award-winning pandemic live stream series, BMA NMWA. I'm Addie Gayoso, NMWA's senior educator. And hello, viewers. I see that you're still joining the room. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a live part captioner with us today, and you can show or hide those live transcriptions by clicking on the CC button in Zoom. If you don't see that, click on the More button, and that should give you an option. Also, feel free to add your questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we will do our best to address them. They will just come to the hosts, so no one else will see your questions, but feel free to add those at any point during the show today. And for those of you who are new, each month, the hosts from NMWA are joined by special guests to center women creatives. We consider topics relevant to our world and offer insight into collaborations NMWA is fostering while its building is closed for renovation. During this time of change, we are excited to exchange ideas with our guests and viewers. Last month, we were joined by NMWA's associate curator, Oreen Zara, and spoke with Harlem-based multimedia artist Diane Smith about her 2 photographs that were recently added to NMWA's collection. If you missed the show, you can watch it on the museum's YouTube channel. I will add it to the chat shortly, and feel free to subscribe so that you can catch future episodes of NMWA xChange. I am happy to introduce my program co-creator and co-host, Ginny Trainer, NMWA's senior curator.
Hi, Addie. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I don't know about where you are, but here in Washington, the weather is absolutely glorious. So thank you for joining us inside. Well, I don't know, actually, maybe you're outside too. We are so honored today to be joined by gallerist and curator Myrtis Bedolla. Myrtis possesses over 30 years as a curator, gallerist, and art consultant, and has run Baltimore's Galerie Myrtis since 2006. Galerie Myrtis specializes in 20th and 21st century American art with a focus on work created by African American artists. Myrtis, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. We are really thrilled to chat with you today because the work your gallery celebrates, a lot of it is work by women artists, which of course is at the core of NMWA's mission. And the work you do is so important and so vital, particularly as it regards Black women artists. Now, about 5 years ago, there was a study that ArtNet reported on that found that only 13.7% of living artists represented by galleries in Europe and North America are women. So again, only 13.7% of living artists represented by galleries in the US and Europe are women. And it probably goes without saying that the percentage is even lower for women of color, artists of color, but particularly women artists of color. And this is even though nearly half of all visual artists in the United States are women. So obviously there's a great disparity. Now, as I mentioned, that study was 5 years ago, and in the art world, that's a considerable chunk of time. So Myrtis, my first question for you is, from your perspective in regards to Black women artists, are things getting better in whatever metric you want to use to measure getting better? Do you think things are improving?
I do believe that there are some measures of improvement. I think that those statistics that you shared are still very relevant. This industry has not been welcoming of women artists nor artists of color. And there is a lot that needs to be done as it relates to creating equity, diversity, and inclusion in museum acquisitions, representation as it relates to gallerists, gallery owners, women gallerists are still very few in numbers when we look at the overall amount of galleries that exist in the United States and across the globe. So there's lots of work that yet needs to be done.
Thank you for sharing that, Myrtis. I'm curious, what most excites you and what most challenges you about your work?
Well, what excites me is representing very dynamic artists who are at the forefront of the contemporary art movement. Many are receiving the recognition that they have rightly deserved. I consider their works part of the American story. And so they are contributing to the Western canon as it relates to, documenting our history, those things that reflect our society, a particular culture, a concern, a voice. And so that brings me great joy. Other things that I get really excited about is discovering new talent, of course, and being able to play a role in building the artist's career. I get excited when I'm able to work with collectors who are building a collection with the intention of it having reflecting who they are, as the part of their mission may be cultural preservation, and seeing the work is more than a commodity, but really part of our cultural capital. So that excites me. I think and also, of course, placing works in museum collections where it will be accessible to the public and then also becomes part of the artist's legacy. What challenges me as an entrepreneur, and very much sit in that place, is, managing the growth of my business, which I'm very fortunate to be in a position to have that struggle. Other things that I'm challenged with is, again, navigating an industry that has not been so welcoming of women, gallerists, and certainly artists of color, which causes challenges for me in terms of placement in museum collections. There are many museums that are really committed to bringing equity, diversity, and inclusion into their collections, and just opening their doors to allow for artists of color to have exhibitions in their space. And then there are others that simply give lip service to it, and it's not really there's not really an honest effort to make that happen. As a gallerist, where there are efforts to acquire the works of artists of color, I'm sitting here waiting for them to come to my door. And, because it's about economic empowerment as well. And so in order to sustain the artist's careers, certainly to sustain my business, we need for those sales to be generated. So it's a complex kind of industry. And I know that all industries have their complexities and there is none that is perfect. But as a gallerist, these are some of the challenges that I often deal with, or I continue to deal with.
I appreciate you sharing those. And I'm curious, do you want to give a shout out to any institutions you feel, even one that's doing a really great job in terms of representation of a
Well, of
variety of
course,
voices?
yours. And I can say that with great earnest because you have featured the work of one of my artists, Delita Martin. You provided her with the opportunity to have a solo exhibition, and you inquired one of her fabulous and amazing pieces, which we're going to have a little peek at today. So thank you for not just saying, giving lip service to it, but really being very honest in your attempt to support women artists of all ilks and galleries that support them as well.
I wasn't fishing, but I appreciate that.
No, well, we speak, I'm just sharing my truth, and that's part of my truth.
We have folks calling in from all over the country and maybe even the world. Is there another organization or museum that you feel would be a good one for them to visit if they were really interested in sort of the work of, that NMWA is doing? Yeah.
Okay, the list is very long. So I know Crystal Bridges, the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. When I was representing Amy Sherrill, they acquired Grand Dame Queenie from me. Gosh, this is putting me on the spot because while I'm
Sorry.
expressing
That's
my
great.
concerns, we do have a long list of galleries that, I'm sorry, that of museums that have been very forthright in their efforts to support us. So go to our website, go to my website and look at the artists' resumes, and those museums are listed, because I don't want to be remiss and not mentioning someone, an institution
Thank
that's
you.
really
Sorry to put you
significant.
on the spot.
That's okay.
What a wonderful problem to have, right? Like that,
Mhm.
so many of them that come to mind, really.
Yes.
I think that speaks
Yeah.
volumes as far as
But the disparities still exist.
mm,
You know, when we look at those numbers, especially if we drill down on the numbers of, you know, I think it's only 1.3% or 3% of works in our major institutions are the works of African American artists. So, you know, there's a lot of work that yet needs to be done.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm wondering, it must be hard to decide which artists you're going to represent, because there are so many wonderful artists out there. Again, a good problem to have. But you know, with galleries, with museums, you know, there's always a decision-making process that has to happen, because you just can't do it all, you know, like physically, you just can't do it all. So how do you go about deciding which artists you'd like to represent?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and one I'm asked often. I have to be very discerning. I'm looking for artists who, one, are on a professional track. I'm not hobbyist. So if you come to me and you've only created one work in the last 5 years, which often that happens, then unless you know that work is magnificent and it took that long, but it's not because it took you 5 years because you were not in your studio. It wasn't a discipline and concerted effort. It was on occasion I'll go there and finish it, and then I'll go back like a year later and look at it again and decide whether I want to work on it further. So I'm looking for artists who are on a professional track. I'm also looking for a unique voice in the work. I view a lot of art. This is my life. I'm surrounded by it. So I'm looking for something that's unique, that I haven't experienced before, that resonates with me visually, that I believe is compelling. I'm looking for quality in the work. Finishing, I want techniques that are refined. I'm looking for an artist who can build a body of work around a single narrative, around materials. And when I say a body of work, I'm looking for 10 to 15 or even more pieces where there's a single idea, or again, it could be material, concern, you know, what keeps the artist up at night, what informs your work. And I'm looking for that to be told throughout, you know, several pieces. So that's the short list of what I'm looking for when I'm considering taking on an artist.
I think that's a great segue, Myrtis. I'm curious. So your gallery currently represents 6 contemporary Black women artists, and we would
Mhm.
love to talk a little bit more about them. I'm sure you know that the museum has a campaign, "Can you not name 5 women artists?" And I feel like we're going to introduce folks to 5 plus 1 today, at least.
Great,
So
great, great.
we'll let you
Yes.
talk a little bit more about the artists that you're currently representing.
Yes, thank you. I'll just go through these very quickly. I'm really pleased to be able to share their work with everyone. So this is the work of Lavette Ballard. She is her narrative centers around telling the stories of Black women. And she sources her imagery from the archives of the Library of Congress or the Schomburg, other places, but those are the primary source materials where she primarily sources the imagery. And her process is one that is collage, painting. The fence that you see her using becomes like the stratus. Um, Often she uses them, repurposes them, here at Besties and Blue Magic, these three beautiful young children that are, you can see through the body language that they're probably, good friends. And so, here's one of the Levette's masterful works. Um, and the fence, I should also add, is symbolic of sort of our social and racial strife. It's symbolic of like barriers that have either, kept Black people in and haven't allowed them to progress through society as they would have liked, or, we're still on a mission to do that. But that, that is the reason that Levette uses the fence, and very often in her work. We can go to the next slide. Okay, this is the work of Tawny Chapman. She is a photographer. That's the base of her work, and it is also mixed media. So she is interested in celebrating the lives of Black children. And through her work, she's saying to them, you are valuable, you are precious, you are loved. The materials she uses are 24 karat gold leaf, sometimes precious and semi-precious stones, acrylic paint. The beautiful young girl, the children that she photographs are typically ones who are either her children or have close relationships with her family, maybe godchildren, nieces and nephews. The young man is actually her son, who appears in your hoodie or your white tee. And in this piece, which is sort of a homage to Trayvon Martin, and saying that to Black boys, no matter how you are dressed, again, you are valuable and should be respected. So no matter what you're wearing, you know, you are worthy.
I just have to
Next, go
for
ahead.
just a second to say that, I mean, these images are amazing, but it doesn't, a digital image can never capture
Oh my God.
person. I mean, the texture on these, they're just luscious. They're absolutely luscious.
They are absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes her, months to finish one piece, and the handwork, again, is so refined. The background is just beautiful. It really,
Yeah.
really is beautiful work.
Really sumptuous.
Indeed. This is the work of Susan Goldman. She is not African American, but she is on our roster. It is a diverse roster that I have of artists. Susan is a master printmaker, and here she is exploring a complicated process and layering of paint through this screen print, and a process that she uses. And she's experimenting and bringing together geometric patterns and floral patterns. So just as with Tawny's work, it's really difficult to appreciate the beautiful, luscious paint that she's laid down on this paper. The works are just really stunning.
And they're quite large as well.
Yes, they are. Next, please. And this is one of our newer artists. This is Monica Ikewu, hyper-realistic painter and portraiture. Monica's works center around Black youth. And what she is attempting to do is just celebrate them as they are. When photographing her subjects, she invites them to dress themselves, to pose in the way that they want to. And what she hopes the viewer will do upon experiencing the work is, if they come with prejudices against Black youth, that they will look into the eyes of these young people and perhaps consider them just as they are. Again, just beautiful Black individuals who, despite how their hair may look and what they're wearing, are just beautiful human beings. and the future of our society. Next, please. And I think Megan is probably the newest to my gallery. And you can see their ages. These are very young people with very skillful hands. So these two paintings, and actually I should, for Monica, Devon is in the current show. Well, actually it has ended, but these two extraordinary pieces by Megan Lewis are actually in our current exhibition, and which is called The Beautiful and the Damned. And in this exhibition, we were examining and challenging Western standards of beauty. And Megan chose to focus her works on Black male figures. And so I love the titles of her work. The only place it exists is in your head. She has combined her beautiful impasto technique of laying down thick paint with the palette knife, and then combine that with these beautiful fabrics to create the subject's clothing. And then the next painting, I still think about it sometimes, is this subject in repose in this beautiful, like floral garden. And the works are just absolutely amazing. So, and I'm the cheerleader here, so I'm going to say that about everyone's work. And I really do love it. This is what excites me. You ask what excites me is discovering talent like this. And they're so young, and their work is just so profound. So, who's to say what the work will become in even another year? But, building the talent and working with artists like this really is very rewarding for me, very satisfying, to be able to sign on talent like this and help to present their work before collectors, museum curators, and just watch their careers blossom. So next, please. And this is Delita Martin, whose work primarily focuses around her relationship with women, and in particular, women in her family. However, the piece on the left, Believing in Kings, she realized that she wanted to celebrate the men in her life. And so in doing that, she did this portrait of her husband, which has become part of the museum collection. And I'm very grateful. We were both very grateful for that. Sitting in Silence is a beautiful example of Delita's ability to layer, to build these beautiful layers of patterns, and what she calls the veilscape, where it is this spiritual place where the waking and the waking world and the spiritual world coexist. And so she uses beautiful decorative papers, sometimes fabrics, which she sews down onto the piece. And the stitch that she uses was, she learned from her grandmother, who was a quilter. So just another example of the way, the beautiful execution and skillful hand of Delita. And these pieces are rather large. So, in terms of scale, she understands how to do that. And again, these beautiful patterns and all these various dimensions that she's able to create. And these works are on paper.
I have to mention too, and Ginny might also go ahead. Oh, sorry, Ginny. I just wanted to say, I put in that we have an online exhibition. So the Delita's exhibition, it was right at the sort of I think it closed right around the time the pandemic began at the museum, but there's an online exhibition that lives in perpetuity on our website. And I wanted to mention too that Delita was a guest on our BMA NMWA show about 1.5 or 2 years ago. And if anyone wants to see that episode, it's on our YouTube page. Ginny might relay the story, but I just wanted to say, I think it was Delita who mentioned that her husband was really excited that his portrait was going to be at the National Museum of Women in the Arts. So I just really love that. He was really proud of that. So sorry, Ginny, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, I was just going to point out again, the scale, particularly of the work on the left, well, the one on the right as well. They are really large works on paper. And it was really so wonderful to have a series of them in a relatively small space in the museum. It really created this almost like chapel-like environment with these large works on the wall.
Yes,
Actually,
Delita. Yeah, creating these large scale Black women, and in the case of creating a large scale plate piece where her husband is featured, and she did a few others with male figures, is part of Delita's intention to have people walk into a space and have to engage with a Black body in a way that is, they're monumentous. I mean, monumental. I mean, they're big. And, that comes from the personal experiences of Black women having been ignored in whatever space that they're occupying, to have to confront the Black body and not be confrontational, but just to acknowledge its presence. So this is an important part of Delita's intention, and which, she does so well.
Yeah. And again, the experience of seeing these in person is completely different because you can really appreciate the textures and the stitching and everything.
Yeah, and that veilscape that she creates, where there's this push and pull of materials and the subject and all the dimensionality that she's able to create is just really incredible.
I lost count. Do we have another artist after this, or was that 6?
That was
I lost
6,
count
but we
too.
have Elizabeth Catlett, who we wanted to chat a little bit about, but these are the 6 contemporary artists.
Yeah, before we move on, I just have to ask it because it occurred to me when I was looking, when we were looking at the artists, that, a number of the artists that you represent are, born and presumably still live in the Baltimore area. But then you have someone like Delita Martin, who lives and works in Texas. So I was just wondering, Myrtis, kind of what, the percentage is of, artists that you represent that are in the immediate area versus somewhere else.
I would say the majority of the artists that I represent live outside of the state of Maryland, I will say. And it's pretty much always been that way. Monica and Megan and Tawny are all very close by. But the majority, and so is Susan, but the majority of the artists live outside of the state of Maryland.
Thank you. I was just, yes. Yeah, so the next thing we wanted to ask you about is kind of another aspect of the work that you do. And this is in regards particularly to the work of Elizabeth Catlett. And we're really fortunate in our collection to have several of her really extraordinary prints. But she's probably most well known as a sculptor. And we've just acquired this sculpture that you see on the right, stepping out of around the year 2000 for the collection, which we're really excited about. And so we're just interested in hearing a little bit more about how you are engaged with, championing the work of deceased artists like Elizabeth Catlett, and how you work with the estate.
Yes, so that service that engagement is primarily through my advisory service. And so I operate in the primary and secondary market. The secondary market just simply meaning works made available for sale for the second time. And so I work with individuals who have, in 2 capacities. They have either inherited a collection, maybe that has been passed down through several generations, and they don't wish to, maintain the work, or individuals who simply want to sell a work out of their collection, maybe because they desire to acquire something else. But specifically with the estates, I'm very fortunate in that I'm sit in a place that's very close to Howard University, and the Barnes Aiden Gallery, which no longer exists. But I mentioned the gallery also because many of the African American artists who were associated with Howard or that gallery, a lot of their works, many of those artists are deceased, and if not all. And so I have been uh, contacted by the descendants, people who own those works, and asked to handle the sale of the collection. So I will research the work, the artist, document them, reach out to museums to determine whether they are interested in acquiring the work. With Elizabeth Catlett, she became very well known as an artist in her lifetime, fortunately. But there were many of her contemporaries that did not, but they had the same exhibition history as, say, Catlett, but they were just overlooked. And so, again, back to the museum's effort to become more inclusive and tell a broader story about America's history, they are now looking to those artists who were just obscure for many years. And so I will, knowing that, reach out to museums. I have a lot of what I call museum wish list, in which now fortunately I'm gaining reputation as a gallery who is handling these estates. And so, many museums will send their list to me. I also work with a lot of auction houses in New York for the same reason. Sometimes the work, I think, requires a broader audience in terms of consideration. And if I think there's a key piece that warrants that, then I will reach out to an auction house. I work primarily with Swan, and I've consigned a very important Elma Thomas painting that's coming to auction in December. That was part of the Thomas's traveling retrospective. So that's it's a long list of things that I do surrounding the estates, but I think that gives people kind of a overall view of where I am in terms of my involvement.
I think that's a great transition actually to talking a little bit more about, you mentioned your relationship with auction houses, and that'll be our segue to talk a little bit more. I mean, as if this weren't enough, Myrtis, you've been extremely busy this fall.
Oh my God.
And we want to talk a little bit about what you've been doing and your work with Christie's as well as the Biennale. There's just so much to celebrate in terms of your work. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about, or let you talk a little bit about the work you've been doing.
Yes, so the collaboration with Christie's, which was a really wonderful collaboration, and I thank them for allowing this opportunity to, supporting my idea when I approached them. So part of the gallery's mission is to become a blue chip gallery and have my artists become blue chip artists. So that requires one of many things. And in part, is to have auction records. Blue chip means, art that sustains its value, goes up in value. Artists are well cataloged, have a strong museum exhibition history, so on and so forth. So in order to achieve auction records for the artist, I approached Christie's shortly after we were invited to participate in the Biennale, and I wanted to leverage our presence there. And so it was just like a no-brainer. They embraced the idea immediately, and so we successfully sold. We featured 6 artists, 2 of which were women, which is Delita and Tawny. Oh, I'm sorry. I left out Monica's painting, so forgive me. I forgot about Monica. So we sold all 3 of their pieces. And so now they all have the important auction records that are, again, key to their becoming blue chip artists.
That's really exciting. Congratulations. And congratulations to the artists too. I'm curious, are those works going into private collections? Are they going to museums? Is it a mix?
Well, Christie's does not disclose, so which
Oh,
we
okay.
knew going in.
Yeah,
Um, if it's an institutional acquisition, they may at some point reach out to us if they need information about the artist, and then we'll know. But I'm not 100% certain where who
interesting.
the
Yeah.
buyers were.
Thank you for sharing. I know that
Yeah.
you were recently in Venice for the Biennale, and I'd love to hear a
Yes.
little bit more about the installation there.
So we were very fortunate to be able to present 8 of our artists at the Biennale, invited by the European Cultural Center, and our host was Personal Structures. So we were part of the Personal Structures effort. And so our exhibition was titled The Afro Futurist Manifesto, Blackness Reimagined. And so curatorially, my approach was to feature works that speak to the future of Black existence. And so, artists created work like Larry Cook about the future of the uh, prison system, and he provided a body of photographs that did not have any human figures in them, because just a landscape, because the hope is that in the future there will be no incarceration. Black men make up 40% of the prison population. So, his work is just juxtaposed against Tony Chapman's, who placed these beautiful Black children against the Italian landscape. So we have a landscape where there are no figures, where we're looking at the future of the prison system, and then we have Black children positioned against an Italian landscape to talk about the future of our Black youth. So there were, a combination of narratives and concerns that the artists addressed, really profound. We looked at, so the themes that were addressed was time in terms of our present, past, and future, space, the space that we occupy, in terms of where Larry is looking at, Delita looked at space in terms of how we occupy our spiritual realm. Morel Doucette looked at the environmental racism in terms of space and Black and Brown communities that are being pushed out because of the development in Miami. Scott Johnson's sculptures looked at African folklore. And so R.V. Smith looked at Greek mythology. Monica's works again examined Black youth, as did Tawny's in terms of our future. So it was very complex narratives going on, but all coming together under the philosophies and theories of Afrofuturism. And we can go, yeah. And so this is the wall. This is Philandus Thames, who created a really extraordinary piece that is actually beaded. We don't have an image here, but he used binary code to create a large scale piece that says space is the place. So he looked at Sun Ra, who is, I don't know if folks know Sun Ra, but he was like one of our early Afrofuturists, and he wanted us to go to another planet. So, but again, looking at it scientifically from, Sun Ra. And I can't, so here we have 2 of Monica's paintings, and then I'm going to try to read what Philandus's brushes say, that more than life interests me, so that I uh, like to knock at the door of the cosmos. And I missed one word there. But again, looking to space and the future, he uses hair brushes and beard brushes as part of, his practice, which is always really profound, and then uses the brushes to carve out these great quotes.
Great. I appreciate that you're sort of revisiting or even potentially introducing folks to this idea of Afrofuturism. It sort of it becomes this wider story, which is exciting, I think, for those who may not be familiar with it, and sort of contextualizing these contemporary artists in that way. We also have a couple of images I know of the exhibition at your gallery. Do we want to take a look at those? And then we also had a question in the chat. Maybe this is something we can talk about in relation to your gallery space. Deborah Walmart was asking, how do you find artists that you represent?
Well, it isn't difficult because we are one of few galleries that are Black owned. And again, not that we only represent Black owned galleries, but we are approached all the time. I think in part because of the reputation that the gallery has gained. So finding artists isn't difficult. Turning them away is what's difficult. Again, when I talked about challenges and growth, that's one of them. So because we turn away so many talented artists, but capacity, I don't have the capacity to take on more artists at this time. So that's something that I'm going to be addressing seriously in 2023, like scaling up, really focusing on the infrastructure of the gallery, as you know, having had a presence in Venice and some of the other wonderful things that have happened. There I'm dealing with more demands. And of course, the artist careers are blossoming as well, which, you know, also requires that we, you know, follow suit and continue to support that growth. So
it's a wonderful problem to have, I
it's a
suppose,
great
right?
place to be in.
Yeah, we have another question actually, and this might be our last one since I know we're getting close to time, but anonymous attendee is wondering, they said they'd love to hear your advice to MFA candidates and how to take the right steps towards gallery representation.
Oh, wow, that is an excellent question. So first, do your research. Before I opened my own gallery, I interned and worked in a few in DC. And one of the things that I learned in being there is how offended the gallerists were when artists would just walk in with their portfolios and expect to be, I would say, expect that the gallery could take time at the moment they dropped in to sit and talk with them. So it's almost like you have a salesperson that comes to your door and is trying to get you to buy something and they show up uninvited. So, and the other thing to remember, so see if you can schedule an appointment. The other thing is do your research. I mean, there was one photography gallery that focused on photography, and she would often have artists come who were painters, and that was, you know, obviously the artists hadn't done their research, and I just learned that in the circle of listening to these gallerists complain about, you know, how rude it was for the artists to show up and how they hadn't done their research and not know that, you know, they specialize in photography and not painting. So, you know, that doesn't bode well with gallerists. So, and I know it can be difficult. Like for me, we're not reviewing portfolios at this time. I would say keep your eye out for calls to artists, but do your research to determine, you know, how legitimate those requests are. And you know, it's you have to find a way to garner the attention of gallerists by way of maybe consider some of the things I suggested are important to me in terms of the criteria that I'm looking for, and visit those spaces before you even approach them about representing you. That's one of the things I ask many artists. It's like, how well do you know my gallery? What do you know about our mission? Are you, you know, and if you can't tell me that, then you definitely are not going to be a candidate. So it is a business. And if you want to become part of the industry, you have to do your work. Beyond creating your work, you have to understand some of the nuances related to the business side of it.
Thank you. I'm sure that our anonymous friend appreciates you responding to that
Oh,
question.
good.
we're about to wrap up, but I didn't know if you wanted to talk any more about the Beautiful and the Damned exhibition, Myrtis.
Well, it has closed, and I said previously what it was about. I would like to share what's coming up.
Yeah, that would be great.
And so we are preparing for our debut at Context Art Miami. We've participated during Basel Week before, but this is our first opportunity to present works at that fair. And then in 2023, so visit our website, it has the dates. And we're showing Delita, Tawny, Megan, Monica, Philandis, and Morel Doucette. In 2023, I'm excited to announce that the Venice exhibition will be presented in Baltimore, and part of it will be at the Reginald Lewis Museum, and then also on the campus of Morgan State University at JELMA, the James E. Lewis Museum. So on their campus. And then I will be presenting an exhibition here with the Venice artists. So we're going to be kicking off 2023 with some exciting exhibitions and ending the year of this fabulous year of travel. And we just came back from New York. We're at the print fair. So it's just been a whirlwind of activity. And I need to slow down a little bit. So it won't happen anytime soon, but it's just been an amazing year.
Well, I just want to thank you so much. We know you've been off and running, so we really do appreciate your time with us, that you were able to introduce us to your great stable of artists, and just to learn more about your process and your practice. And hoping that viewers may have a chance to come and visit your gallery sometime if they live locally or are visiting the area.
Yes, I invite everyone to visit us either online or in person. The next exhibition in the gallery, we hope will take place before the year ends, will be we will be featuring the works out of the James E. Hill estate.
Mm.
And he was a Howard University professor who was friends with Charles White, Jacob Lawrence, Romare Bearden, Elizabeth Catlett, Elma Thomas. The Thomas painting that was consigned at Swans came out of his collection. It is one of the most important collections I've had the privilege of working on. And so it's just, I've had to take a deep dive in terms of research, really rare works and drawings, just incredible. So it's just, it's amazing. So I feel very honored and very privileged to have an opportunity to work on this collection.
That sounds absolutely fascinating.
It is.
Get up there and
You must.
Thank you, Myrtis, so much for joining us. It's really been an absolute pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time. I know you have a very busy schedule, doing all these wonderful things. And so we really, really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm grateful to you for allowing me to be part of your important platform and allowing my voice to be heard. Addie, thank you. And Joy, thank you also for your contribution to today's discussion.
And I just want to tell people that are you know, if you are inclined to join us again, we hope you do. We're actually going to take a little bit of a break in December, a little hiatus, but we will be back in January, Tuesday, January 10th at noon Eastern time. And we will be speaking with artist Katarina Tibulka, who you see here on the left in the picture, standing next to our own Hannah Shambrum, who worked very closely with the artist to bring her latest iteration of her Solonga project to Washington, to the National Museum of Women in the Arts. As Addie mentioned, we are still closed for renovation, as you can tell by the scaffolding. We have activated the exterior with Katarina's work. If you're in the area downtown, drive by, see it in person. And we're going to be talking with her and hopefully Hannah as well in January about this series of work that she has done. So hope everyone can join us then. Until then.
Thank you all so much, and go and vote if you have not voted.
Very important. All right, goodbye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Myrtis.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.